Hi, everyone. Leadership development programs have been around for decades. So, why is focusing on leadership programs specifically for people of color important? Our guest is dedicating her work to ensuring that emerging leaders of color have the opportunity to learn and grow professionally, build deep relationships with peers, and become the next generation of leaders in the nonprofit sector.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Coffee Time with Masterminds. My name is Peta Blakely, and I'm the founder and principal of Blakely Consulting.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I am Cynthia Rojas, founder and principal of To Your Growth.
Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds. I'm Rebecca Tuttle, founder and principal of Grant Right Now and Grant Writing for Good.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Time with Masterminds, a 30-minute conversation with leaders of mission-based organizations. I am Cynthia Rojas, and I want to welcome listeners in the U.S. and Australia, where we are being podcasted, and all over the globe. And while you're here, introduce yourself by telling us your name and where you're from in the comments. Our guest, Jackie Downing, Director of Grant Making and Nonprofit Support at the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven, realized this gap in leadership development programs and has developed a program that is focused specifically on emerging leaders of color. Today, we will talk about why this is important and what she is learning in the process. I would like to introduce my co-host and guest, Peta Blakely and Jackie Downing.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. How are you, Jackie?
Doing well today. How about you, Cynthia?
I'm good. How are you, Peta?
Good, thank you. Good to see you.
Same here. I'm so excited. This is my favorite topic. I could talk all things leadership. And I am specifically excited about this episode because Jackie and I have worked together on this program, and I have to tell you, it's been a powerful experience. So sharing it with everybody is something I've been looking forward to. So yeah, leadership today. All right. So Jackie, in my intro, I talked about how leadership development programs have been around as long as I think we recognized that there are traits and characteristics that are needed in leaders and skills. But there's a gap, right? And you have identified that gap, you and the Community Foundation of Greater New Haven. And so I'm interested in hearing your journey to why you felt a leadership program specifically for emerging leaders of color was instrumental, especially this time in our history.
Thank you, Cynthia. At the Community Foundation, we started an initiative just before the pandemic, an inclusive growth initiative to make sure that there was equitable growth in our economy in the Greater New Haven community. We wanted to create opportunity for all. And then the pandemic hit. So growth was not really in the plan at that point in time. It was really sort of a let's sustain this community and get through, but still keeping in mind that opportunity and equity for all. And my interpretation of my role in that was to take a look at the nonprofit sector itself, not necessarily the for-profit sector that we were encouraging growth in, but the nonprofit sector, and how did that relate to opportunity for all? And now there are lots of leadership programs, as you mentioned, but there are different kinds of leadership programs. There is, how do I be a leader in the community? How do I be a community organizer? How do I get on boards and become influential that way? Our program is specifically about how do I become the CEO of a nonprofit organization? And that's where we saw the skill gap and the training gap that might be missing. So do you have a follow-up?
No, I was just going to say, I love that, this idea of the CEO of a nonprofit. You're right, I've not heard leadership programs claim that. So I love it. I love
Right,
it.
and ours is very specific. This is not how to make you a better leader or how to start your own nonprofit. This is how to get the big chair of an established nonprofit. All the baby boomers are retiring, and it was accelerated now. We've got the great resignation that we didn't really anticipate, but here it is. And we knew that there would be a leadership change, and we wanted to make sure there was an opportunity for people of color to be able to have the confidence and skills and network to take over those big chairs.
Yeah, so some people are going to ask, well, how do the white men learn how to be executive directors, or maybe more white women? How do the white women learn to be executive directors? You know, and why doesn't that just work for the leaders of color?
Well, perhaps that could have been, in some cases, that families who were putting their white children through school had the opportunity to support them so they could take unpaid internships and lower paying jobs while they were going through, or not work while they were going through school, in order to be able to volunteer places and gather the skills that they needed. Whereas perhaps some people of color may have needed to work more to put themselves through school, didn't have those opportunities, didn't have the family wealth to be able to support them to do that. So there may have been a gap that was created in that case. There may have also been the old network. You know, if I'm the executive director and a friend of mine that I went through school with wants to bring in their child to learn more, well, I'm going to give them a break. And there may not have been the network created for people to have those opportunities where they had a foot in the door from a relationship of a parent or themselves being able to get into a nonprofit. So I think that's maybe where some of the gap came in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll tell you a little interesting story. The very beginning of leadership theory believed that leaders were born, and they were born out of great white men. Right? It's actually called the great man theory, right? Yeah. And so leaders were just they came to us like heroes, and and then we went into traits, and there's specific traits, right? And then there's specific characteristics, and it wasn't until probably 40 years, 50 years into the industry that somebody said, wait a minute, we can learn this. You're not just born a leader. And so now we're looking at leadership as a process versus a person, right? So the industry has definitely evolved. But back in the day, Peter, we didn't need programs because they were born.
Right.
And I'm going to push back a little on that, because I think some of it is inherent. Some of it is born in you. Mm-hmm. But I think people of color are born as leaders, in addition to white men, and women are born as leaders. In addition, it's the opportunity. And again, that's the opportunity for all. If you open the space and you allow a leader to be a leader and give them the confidence that they need to step up, then they're there. They're going to use their inherent skills. And then if you can supplement those with programs like the one we do, and with all the other leadership opportunities that are out there, then it gives them all that much more advantage.
Yeah. And what makes this program focused on people of color? Like what is it about the program that makes that unique?
I think it's the opportunity. So the benefit, I think, of making it uniquely for people of color is the safe space that it creates. It brings people in who have lived experience, the same basis of lived experience of what may have been the lens that they can look through life on. Gandhi said, be the change you want to see in the world, you wish to see in the world. This is giving them that opportunity, but it's giving it to them through their own lens of their own experience. Whereas if you are in a group of mixed race, somehow it defaults to the white culture. And
Yeah.
we didn't want that to happen. We wanted there to be able to acknowledge that there is a difference in the way that people are treated, in the way that paths are taken. And this allows them to have that safe space to talk through that. But it doesn't compromise on the fact that we need to move forward and acknowledge that and gain the practical skills that you need to be in that big chair. So it's sort of taking in both worlds and seeing how you can create that bridge. And the reflection time that we build into the program, which Cynthia, I think was your brainchild, the reflection time is critical for these folks to be able to process what they're learning and what it means to them personally and professionally and organizationally. They're looking at it in 3 levels.
Yeah, so there is which I have not experienced in the past, but a very intentional reflection time. And we use that space to talk about what we've learned either that day or have learned, how can we apply it, or what have been the obstacles that we have faced in the space as a result of being part of a marginalized group of individuals. So that reflection has become really powerful, a really powerful part of the program. And I think for year 2, we have expanded that part so that there's actually more time for reflection, because we also get to talk about, well, this is great, but what does this mean when you're a person of color and you walk into a room and you automatically become invisible? Right? So thank you for teaching me all of this, but the world makes me invisible. And we get to have that conversation and in a great safe space.
Yeah, and I
Peter,
think that's so important.
Yeah.
Jackie,
Yeah.
what has been the appetite from organizations and employers in the not-for-profit space for attracting these leaders? I think one of the other things that happened during the era of COVID was a renewed interest in racial equity and something of a crisis in diversity in the leadership of not-for-profits. So do you have organizations calling you and saying, we need help with our pipeline?
All the time. Organizations are hyper aware that their leadership needs to reflect the constituency that they serve, or that their leadership needs to reflect the general population of our community. Even if they're not serving a primarily Black and Brown community, they understand that there are folks within this community that are people of color, and their leadership needs to reflect that. So I am hearing it constantly as far as board members. Many are looking for board members. We did a lot of research into that, and many of our boards are quite diverse. Looking at our last round of grant making, there were, I believe, 60% of our organizations had more than 30% people of color on their board already. There were many people of color who were leading the board. So we were pleased to see that some work has been done. And most are on their journey. We ask a specific question about what work they're doing in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging on the application. And most of them are doing, I would say all but one of the organizations, and it was a Black-led and Black-run organization, is doing specific work in that realm with their board and with their staff and with how they deal with the community.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I had a question and I left my mind. That's been my new mantra. I keep forgetting because I stopped writing down my questions. So another unique thing about this program, which I love, is that the presenters are almost all of them are people of color themselves. And what I have seen, oh my God, and this, I could not have predicted this. Like, people's eyes open in a very different way because they can now see themselves in the front of the room one day, right? And so we've had really, I mean, we have list of amazing presenters. And because there are also people of color that have also dealt with barriers, they come in already having that lens. And so we've had many of them come and say, you know what, we don't have a PowerPoint. We don't have the 8 steps to success. Why don't we have a conversation? And that just becomes powerful. It becomes powerful. So that's worked really well. And that is unique to this program because it's very intentional.
Yeah. And Cynthia, I'd like to expand on that a little bit because you gave me credit at the beginning of this for creating this program. And certainly I was a part of the leadership, and the foundation was the driving force behind saying, let's do a program, figure it out. But I had a colleague on staff here at the foundation, Kara Strawn, who was a woman of color, a Black woman, who helped develop the program. And then we turned to 9 different executive directors who are people of color from our community, and said, if you had a program when you were coming up, what would it have done for you? How would it be structured? How would it work? So they helped us create what the program would look like. They were also the selection panel of choosing the candidates who would participate in the program. And then, as you said, the presenters are primarily people of color, so that we can show that there are experts in the community, and again, create a network. So now these people have the opportunity to call an expert or email an expert and reach out because they already have a relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. And we have to mention UConn is a partner in this effort and has developed the curriculum, which is amazing. What are you learning, Jackie, on this journey? I mean, you've been down this road. You do a lot of programming, or you set up a lot of programming for the foundation. What are you learning specifically about this journey?
Thank you for that, because I had to think a little bit about, it gives me time to reflect on this. Learning that you need to provide that space for reflection, because there are times that folks need that time to process and to digest and to be able to follow up with others, to get their personal feelings out. Even though this is a professional development opportunity, there's so much personal anxiety almost built into this that it gives them that safe space to be able to do that. I've learned that, as I just said, that we had other people help us create this. I learned that I don't have all the answers, that I learn every day from people in the community. And you need to go to the people who've walked the walk in order to move forward. You can't create your own path. You have to find other people that have already been there and learn from them. And I think that's critical to the success of any program.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I am learning a lot. I am learning that I am reminded, I'm not learning this, but I am reminded of the multiple barriers. When you're in it and when you're on the journey to your own leadership pathway, sometimes it's really hard to see. You question yourself first. I don't have enough experience. I don't have an MBA. This is why I got passed up. And you go on and on and on. And now as an outsider looking in, it's like, wow, there are a lot of barriers. And we've heard that in the reflection time, right? People have said, I cannot believe that my organization has never taken the time to talk to me about this or teach me about how to design a budget. But they make decisions about budgets every day, right? And so I've also learned that when you have people show up that look like you, it creates an amazing space, a very powerful space. And the one thing I've learned, because I am a product of 5 leadership development programs, I'm almost addicted to them. And now I'm leading them. So, and trust me, if I could do that all day, I would just help people rise to the best part of themselves. But I forgot what I was going to say, but I'll tell you this. I wonder, and Jackie, tell me if you've seen or heard anything. I wonder if the fact that these individuals are applying for the program, if it changes in a positive way the relationship between them and their executive director.
We're just about to get feedback on that, but I think it does. And I think we've heard from the cohort members themselves that, there was an awakening, that they suddenly learned things and understood how an organization should be run, and saw where the gaps were, and saw where the problems were, and where the opportunities were within their organization. And I know for at least some of them that allow these new leaders to actually take on a leadership role and make changes within the organization. I hope that's true for all of them. I don't know, but I hope that's true for all of them, because they've picked up some amazing skills and they have great perspective and insight. And they're sort of straddling that. They're part of the community and they're part of the infrastructure. This gives them the opportunity to do both and make some real substantive change. And I love that opportunity for them. And it looks like they're being allowed the space to do that.
Yeah.
And what is the involvement of their employers in the participants' process? Do they apply through them? Do they get nominated by them, or do they just go on their own and say, "Hey, I want to do this thing"?
We specifically did not have organizations nominate people.
Mm-hmm.
The decisions were made based solely on the qualifications and the aspirations of the individual candidates, not the organization they come from.
Yeah.
So if they were able to make a compelling case that they really do want to have a commitment to Greater New Haven, and a commitment to nonprofit service, and a commitment to advancing their career, that's what we were looking for. Yeah. We weren't sure where they were coming from, so we were flexible on that.
Yeah.
Their organization in the first year has really no other role than to allow them the space and time to be able to come to participate in all of the sessions fully. So they have to be able to release them for the time to do that. At the end of the first year, each of the organizations is obligated to do an organizational assessment. So we use the CCAT, the Core Capacity Assessment tool from TCC Group. They participate, they take that survey, board, staff, key volunteers take that survey, and then the cohort member becomes the organization lead on that, works with staff and board to help interpret the report that they get and create an action plan to implement change. And then part of the grant that we make to them is budgeted for them to actually have the resources to do something within the organization. So if it's buying equipment, training staff, bringing in a consultant, the organization has to give them the resources to do that from the grant that we make, and allow them the time and the access to the board and staff to be able to make those changes.
So the organizations themselves, it sounds like they're going to really learn a lot about themselves through this process.
We hope so. We hope so. And we hope, and every organization has a lot to learn from itself. The CCAT is not a report card. It's really just a snapshot, and it's perception. So the people who take the survey, they're sort of into intuitive questions that, what is your opinion about how strong your mission is shared by board and staff, things like that. So once those perceptions come through, most executive directors will find it as an affirmation of what they already know, but it's a great document to be able to turn back to the board and say, see, I've been telling you this for years.
Yeah.
We have something we need to do. In this case, it gives our cohort member an opportunity to be seen as a leader,
right? To
be able to develop that action plan, to develop the budget they need in order to do that, to make the contacts they need to make it work within the staff and externally. So it really gives them an opportunity to step up and be seen by their senior leadership and their board as a person who can affect change within the organization and move it forward.
Yeah, and probably to see themselves, right? To be using the skills that they might have been developing in the program, and to see themselves as capable of effecting change in their organization.
Right. We're hoping that this gives them an opportunity to use what they've learned.
Yeah.
Another thing it does is that it starts to build a network, and this is instrumental in leadership programs. I've mentioned that I've been to a bunch of them, and in all of them, I have built strong relationships that surpass like years and years after the program, and we are still partners and we consider ourselves colleagues, and there are people that I can call even 12 years later, and if I needed them, I know that they will be there, and that's really powerful. And what this program is doing is because every participant is a person of color. Jackie, what you're doing in essence is building a strong network of colleagues who are going to be the next generation of nonprofit leaders in the city of New Haven or greater New Haven. And that's worth every bit of this process. So another interesting thing I want to mention, because at first I was like shocked when this happened, and I went to Jackie and I was like, Jackie, we have people who are thinking about leaving their jobs and going into other roles, and don't they have a commitment, and what does that do to the organization? And Jackie, what was your answer? Because I was freaking out.
That's exactly why we created this program.
Yep.
It was about mobility. It's not about being a better employee where you are. It's about mobility and taking over the leadership and being the change you want to see. Going to an organization where you can influence its board, its staff, its work in the community in a way that challenges where you want it to go. So that was exactly why we created this program. And the network creation is absolutely intentional. So every presenter that came in and everyone who's was on the selection panel and who helped us create the program has offered to be a mentor for our cohort members. We have a few of those relationships already set up and running. So they're going to make those phone calls and have that check-in time. And hopefully, for once the first year is complete, the first cohort will continue to meet on a monthly basis. The second cohort is starting soon, and they'll start in September. And at some point, at least once or twice during the year, we're going to bring the two cohorts together, so that now that's not a network of 10, but a network of 20, plus the panel, plus the presenters. So now we've got a network of maybe 40 people who have each other to rely on and can reach out to.
You know, your question, Cynthia, is so interesting and sort of goes to what I see as, well, this is a foundation of the region. They work for the region, not the individual employers. And we're talking about changing the landscape in this area, right? And I think the point that Jackie was making was, well, we don't particularly care which organization they're in. We're changing all of the leadership in this area for the benefit of this area, which I think is really interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it shows how I've learned so much. Of course, I'm here thinking, no, this is a leadership program to make you the CEO of your organization. Jackie said, that's exactly what Jackie said. She was like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted to happen. And they didn't leave New Haven. They left because they're working their way up.
Right.
And they're moving to nonprofits, which now makes a lot of sense. But at first I thought, everybody's leaving. This is not everybody.
Well, if the organizations wanted to cultivate their own leadership of color, they would start internal programs, right?
Yes, I love that. And so a final thing is, because we're almost out of time, is that it is important for leadership programs to include the ecosystem as much as it can, right? So this program also involves the organization, especially during year 2. It involves other leaders in the communication and other leaders in the community. They are the ones that are teaching the workshops, right? So it's developing accountability on all levels, right? Jackie is saying to the seasoned leaders, we need you as mentors. You have something to give back and help the next generation. And then organizations are being told that, hey, we have to include these leaders and let them apply what they have learned into the organization so that the culture can begin to shift. So, Jackie, you have a gold mine here, and I can't wait to see the army that we build.
We are just as excited about it. You know, we've learned from the first cohort about how to move forward. We're happy with it.
Yes, yes. And any final words or to emerging leaders or to organizations, Jackie?
Be open to change. Believe in yourself. Believe that you can do it, and find a network of people that will support you through that, both personally and professionally.
Awesome, awesome. Peter, any learnings for you?
This has been really, really fascinating. And I think I had some ideas of the points of resistance to the progress of leaders of color, but understanding how this program is designed, specifically targeting that and decentering whiteness and centering the lived experience of people of color, has been really eye-opening.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, I love it. I am a part of it. I was honored year one. I get to have the honor again year two to work with both of the cohorts. So this will be an exciting year. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to meet a couple of them and they get to share their experience. All right. Well, have a good weekend, everyone, and we'll see you next week. Bye.